Morning, everybody. Andy here again. First things first, as usual, the daily figures down below. As I said, they now include deaths everywhere, not just in hospitals, in the care homes, hospices, etc., etc. But I'm sure there's a bit of a lag, so how reliable they are, definitively, if you see what I mean. So the deaths reported yesterday 674. So they're always going to be a bit higher now because of the fact that we're including so many. So the total deaths now are 26,711. And I noticed yesterday, I think it was Italy, their death figure, and they're the highest in Europe as far as I'm aware. They are 27,000 something. So I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that we're going to catch them up and unfortunately overtake them. The daily album yesterday was this. Be Bop Deluxe's Futurama came from 1975, and it's one of those albums that I remember from that time and having it at that time. But it's one that's cropped up. Everyone who's been doing these top 10 albums, especially of the vinyl era for people of a certain age, of a certain vintage, should we say? And I included it in my top 10, and it was also in my sort of influential albums that I did. It's all these. It keeps us amused, especially during lockdown. It's certainly keeping people amused at the moment. But it cropped up, and a group of my friends have all put it as one of their albums because I remember listening to this. If you've never heard it, you may well recognise some of the singles. Ships in the Night was a big single. There's a single off this called Made in Heaven, actually, which I used to play in my band back in the 1970s. Would you believe? So there you go. So that's the influence it had on me. Great album. Bill Nelson, a wonderful guitarist. I don't know how many guitarists. I think this is done by Roy Thomas Baker, I do believe, who worked with Queen, amongst others. I think he did at Night at the Opera, one of those albums. So you can guess the sort of production values that we have on this particular album. And what's brilliant now, apart from just all my friends sort of say, oh yeah, I remember that album and everything like that. And actually there's one friend I will mention who borrowed my vinyl copy, which I have behind me actually now. Back in I think it must have been in the early 80s or the late 70s. I finally got that album back about 3 years ago. He'd had it for all this time, and I'd moved house and got rid of albums and looked through my vinyl and thought, there's no way I would have got rid of Futurama by Be Bop Deluxe. And I hadn't. Mark had it all the time. There you go. I've got it back now, and it was well looked after. Thank you. But the brilliant thing about this sort of time is that now we can have an album like this, and they bring it out in a... you've got all this, and you've got booklets, and it's double CDs and all this sort of stuff. And this is through a label called Esoteric Records, who are out of Cherry Red Records, and they're back from the punk days, but they're doing some great work re-releasing old albums in this sort of format. It's been remastered. There's a new studio remix. There's live tracks, and they've done this one as well. Remember that one? What a cover, eh? Probably wouldn't be allowed now. And once again, the same sort of format. And they do like 7-disc versions with DVDs, all this sort of stuff. And the first album that they did, Axe Victim, is coming out in July, I do believe, giving the same treatment. They're going backwards, it seems, but brilliant to be able to revisit that. It takes you back to those days, obviously, but gives you all the extras and the sleeve notes and everything. There's a booklet in there, like a 40, 50-page booklet, and most of it is written by Bill Nelson himself, so you're getting the insight into all that thing. Anyway, enough about the music, sorry. It's one of those things, but I will be talking about music in a minute, actually. What I wanted to talk about really today was, in times like this, in times of adversity, innovation always comes out. It happens all the time. You think of world wars, and maybe you don't want to think of world wars, but if you look back at the history of world wars, and because of the immediacy of the situation, the seriousness of the situation, new innovations come out. Like radar came out of the Second World War. Okay, atomic bombs came out of the Second World War. Rocket technology came out of the Second World War, and you could probably, like, airplanes were used a lot in the First World War, and wouldn't be where we are now if it hadn't been for that, etc. Space age technology like communication satellites effectively came out of research done during the Second World War, and where would we be without them? And Arthur C. Clarke, who come up with the geosynchronous orbit, that's another story altogether. But we've had that now because of as I said, the seriousness of the situation. Bureaucracy tends to go out the window, and it's funny how that happens. Hopefully we'll remember to mention a couple of examples of that in a minute. But you think of what's happened now. Like we've got tentative steps towards viruses. Well, that's happened very, very quickly compared to how it usually happens. Yes, I know you could be cynical and say that whoever makes the virus is going to make a lot of money out of it, but it's been done quickly. I'm not saying corners have been cut, but certainly they have it in some ways, in the good ways. We've had Formula One companies and others getting involved with making ventilators for hospitals and other examples of that, factories changing their production to do one thing instead of another. And saying that bureaucracy side of things, if you've got a cheque now, remember those? We used to write a cheque for money. You don't actually have to take them into a bank now because it's pretty much impossible. I heard the other day of a friend just basically scanning it and sending it off. When someone delivers something to your door, you don't have to sign for it anymore. They just take a photo of it. So, can we ever go back to those times? Hopefully we can't. You look at the way things work in supermarkets and the way that things have changed, etc. like that. People working at home. It's another great example. My son, for example, won't tell you what he does, but before he used to do shared an office space, I suppose, a hot desk maybe it was, with a colleague of his, and one would work 3 days at home and then 2 days in the office, and vice versa, that type of thing. And I said, well, why don't you work from home all the time? He said, well, we're not allowed to, for tax reasons or for some bureaucratic reason. That's gone out the window now, and we all know that that's going to change things. And also, not just the innovation, but the change in the lifestyles affects the way that things happen, the way that things are going to happen in the future, with the way that we are, the way that we're doing things, like working from home. Well, we need those office spaces. Yes, you'll need them because people actually they realise they actually quite like being in an office. Even those annoying people in the corner who don't do this or nick all the biscuits or drink all the tea or something, it's actually that human contact that you value. I'm sure we're feeling that. But one of the things is the innovation thing, and the way you have to change is with the Hastings Rock Radio, which I mentioned the other day. We should be doing an FM broadcast, and we should be starting it at midnight tonight. We're not doing that for obvious reasons, which I've mentioned before, but we've changed that, and we're now doing a completely internet broadcast, and we've had to change the way that we do things completely. We've never done this before, like so many other people are doing things they've never done before, and we're doing it quickly. Yes, we've had some brilliant technical help from people around the station, especially John, who I will mention, our computer man, who's absolutely brilliant, and has had to put a lot of time and work and effort into it. But you're brainstorming all the time, you're coming up with new ideas, and you think, let's try this, something you possibly couldn't try normally because you're doing another broadcast. This is something different, so it challenges you, and new ideas come out that you have to try because you need to get the station on the air. So we're broadcasting purely by the internet, purely from DJs working from their homes, with the technology and having to log into a central system. And I could go into details of how we work the playlist and how they know what to play and the jingles and all this sort of stuff. It's brilliant the way that that's worked, and that has enabled us to think, well, we could do this at other times. As I said, there's a it moves on from all of these innovations that come on and think, well, actually, we could use this for good. We could use this in other circumstances. It pushes technology, it pushes the civilizations along. All of these things happen. I said, wars that happened back in the Middle Ages or before that with new technology came along, which probably helped us. I'm sure there's books written about that type of thing. So just think about that, out of adversity does come innovation. There are some good things that come out of this and some things that will change our lives for the better. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some that won't help us particularly, but that's the nature of things. There's always a bit of yin and yang, isn't there? But Hastings Rock is on air online from midnight tonight and for 28 days until midnight on Friday the 29th of May. Give it a try, give it a listen. I'll put the links down there because I'm intrigued to hear what it's going to sound like as anyone else. I think it's going to sound pretty good actually. I'm very pleased and very proud with what we've done and with the team that have been working behind this, so it's going to be interesting and enjoyable as well, especially if you like your rock music. So anyway, I'll leave it there. So have a good weekend. I'm sure it's going to be exciting. It's May Day weekend here in Hastings. Actually, we usually have the Jack in the Green festival and everything going on, and they're doing that online. And there you go, another thing that's happening. They're trying to do this online. They're doing a parade online. They're dancing at dawn on May Day, which is today. Virtually, and they're doing a Zoom thing, but hopefully they can do a parade on Zoom. It's brilliant, the technology, the innovation, and quite often it's older people trying these things out and getting these things together. So that's good. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing that. So enjoy your weekend. Maybe you can tune into the Jack in the Green thing. If I can find a link, I will actually put it down below. So you maybe, wherever you are in the world, you can join in the craziness that goes on in Hastings, even if we're not allowed to go out and do it together, if you see what I mean. Anyway, stay at home and watch it online and listen online as well. Stay safe, stay strong, and hopefully I'll speak to you tomorrow. Goodbye.